Hello, welcome to Working with Miniatures. I'm Jim, and tonight we're going to be painting the Christmas night from the Reaper Miniatures line, the 12 Days of Christmas. We'll primarily be using Army Painter Speedpaints, Warpaints, washes, and metallics. Let's get started. This miniature was previously primed with an airbrush using Vallejo's matte black primer, followed by an anti-zenithal spray of golden indigo and zenithal sprays of turquoise and then white inks. Once inside at my desk, I apply speed paints to act as the base coats for the cloak, white fur, leathers, and golden metals. For some reason I didn't base coat the flesh and hair here, and I won't get to that until later in the video. In all honesty, I didn't really want to paint this miniature. The entire time I felt like I wasn't enjoying the process, nor did I like the sculpt. However, once I got to about where I painted the sclera of the eyes, it quickly grew on me, and despite several mistakes, in the end I'm glad I painted it, and I'm happy with it. To deepen the shadows in the large folds of the cloak, I apply a second speed paint. I then use Tainted Gold, a close color match of the Hoplite Gold speed paint, and I apply this to the cross-hatching bands around the scabbards and the small belt buckles on his chest. I didn't use speed paints on these, as I felt they would have too easily spread to other areas that I did not want them on. My plan with the fur was to keep it simple, so I add a few highlights, first with Spaceship Exterior and then matte white, with the latter being focused only where light would directly shine on the fur. Since Tainted Gold is so bright as it is, instead of adding a lot of highlights, I instead add multiple increasingly darker shadows before adding one highlight in the end. Later, I'll apply a matte varnish to this miniature that will help dull the reflectiveness of this metallic paint. So I end up coming back after the varnish and reapply a final metallic highlight so those selected spots can reclaim that extra bit of reflective shine. I turn to the leathers next, mixing fur brown and werewolf fur. The latter color is a close match to the Rudy Fur speed paint, with the addition of the fur brown helping to punch up the color, letting the next highlight of fur brown follow. After this highlight is finished, I move to the flesh and hair for a bit, but I'll be coming back to finish the leathers later. I was all over the place with this miniature, and though I typically try to plan ahead better so I finish one section at a time, I truly failed to accomplish that this go around. Next, I do something I should have done a while ago. I finish base coating the flesh and hair with scar tissue and tiger's eye skin respectively. With a mix of scar tissue and jasper skin, I apply a mild shadow to the flesh, in the eye sockets, ears, around the nose, hairline, and under the cheeks. Most of this video has been sped up to 2 or 3 times the actual speed, as I try to keep my videos under 7 to 10 minutes for the most part. For the face and sword blade, I'll be showing the real-time speed for most of the shadows and highlights. I should have used a darker color for the base for the hair, but I settled with applying a dark tone wash to add a little depth before adding a highlight with Abomination Gore. Once everything is dried to the touch, I head outside and give him a few good light sprays of Tesser's Dull Coat Matte Varnish. This will protect the work thus far should I get too heavy-handed with mineral spirits in the next few steps. As I mix a black and blue oil wash, the black is just mineral spirits and Winsor & Newton's Ivory Black, and the blue is an equal mix of French Ultramarine, a Phthalo Blue, and mineral spirits. If you're on the fence of using oil paints because you think it's a lot of work or you're leery of it being messy, I can assure you it's not. Just be sure to work over a protected surface and have small quantities of mineral spirits or thinner on hand at a time so you can't spill a ton of it. After hitting the cloak with the blue wash, I applied the black wash everywhere except the blade, the flesh, the hair, and the shield. I did add black wash to the shield, but more so as a pin wash as opposed to just slapping it all over. There, I only wanted it concentrated around the edges of the shield and reindeer design. As for cleanup, it's as simple as wiping the brush off on a paper towel and then rinsing it in mineral spirits and then wiping it off a couple more times. Then you can carefully wipe away most of the oil paints with a paper towel. Once the bulk is gone, get a new paper towel with a little bit of mineral spirits to remove the rest. After 30 to 45 minutes, I dampen some small makeup sponges with mineral spirits and then remove most of the spirits, and then lightly buff away the oil wash from the upraised areas. This is specifically why I varnished earlier. Mineral spirits can remove unprotected acrylics fairly easily, especially speed paints. The final part of cleaning up after using oils, roll the sponge or sponges in a paper towel and toss it in the bin. I finished the cloak with 2 highlights before finishing the leathers with 1 additional highlight. Though it's not shown here, I also re-add the final gold metallic highlight to restore some of its original shine that was toned down by the matte varnish spray. I turn to finishing the flesh next and add 2 highlights. I wanted to point out that this is how slow I painted the entire miniature, with the exception of when using speed paints and the oil washes. I sometimes worry that this is lost with the sped up video segments, but generally, I'm painting everything at this pace and speed, or even slower if it's something tiny like the eyes. This second and final flesh highlight is in the same spots as the previous one, but covering less area. This final flesh highlight took maybe 1 to 2 minutes to complete in several passes to slowly build it up. I finished the hair next with a similar approach, though the highlights on the hair have to be treated differently. My flesh highlights have come a long way from when I first started nearly 2 years ago, but my hair has several long rows to hoe before it's where I'd be happy with, along with my glazing ability. Though in fairness to myself, the idea of glazing I think I understand. It's more so the execution and where to start each glazing pass I feel I'm having the most difficulty with. And speaking of glazing, it's time to start the final piece of this miniature, sans the base, which is done over a slow and painful process of glazing repeatedly. The sword in the end came out okay, but it's not amazing, and I was pretty hard on myself while painting this sword. I think I spent maybe 3 hours going back and forth on the glazes as I had to allow time between each pass to let it fully dry, as I'd fear I'd tear the previous layer up and make it especially blotchy. I'll note that once I did the edge highlights and final vertical white reflection, it made it look a lot better almost immediately. I suppose I should be a little more lenient on myself, considering this is only the 4th non-metallic metal blade I've tried. No, screw that, I suck. I need to get better, stop being a failure. I need to go take my vitamins and try harder next time. Each color of glazing was done repeatedly over 3 to 5 applications, trying to slowly reduce the covered area each time and always end the brushstroke towards the middle of where I wanted the reflection to be the brightest at, before moving on to the next color. And even still, I had to come back a few times with previous colors to try and create a better blend between the two. For me, glazing like this is currently frustrating, but it's also entirely my fault for putting off learning how to glaze better for so long. Once I got to this stage, I only applied these highlights on the upward half of the blade, as I assumed light shining from upwards would be brighter than the reflections from off of the snow. But I live in Georgia in the United States, so snow is not exactly something we have a ton of experience being around. Here you can see my transitions are imperfect. They're not even great. I was getting a little frustrated with it and I mentally needed a quick win, so I went ahead and added an edge highlight with matte white. Immediately I felt some relief as I could see almost a finished product. I decided to add the rest of the edge highlights, and before I knew it I said screw it and started adding the matte white highlights everywhere. I also started to add random thin horizontal lines, and this helped to obscure some of the bad glaze transitions I had, and in a few minutes what I thought was complete garbage was salvaged into something passably decent. I know it can be a lot better, but I was happier with it than I thought I was going to be. Before finishing the base and calling it a night, I apply some anti-shine matte varnish with a brush onto the cloak. The oil wash had given the shadows a very reflective shine, making it look perpetually wet. I finished the base by gluing on a rock and two of Army Painter's frozen tufts before mixing AK Interactive Snow Terrain with some water until it looks delicious. I then spread this around carefully, as well as add a tiny amount to the tufts. With the snow terrain still very much wet, I sprinkle on AK Interactive Snow micro balloons and tap off the excess, and then add a tiny amount of the snow terrain slush to the bottom parts of the cloak. Once everything is dry, I use a clean brush to remove any micro balloon dust on the miniature and then black out the base. This is the end result. I'm happy with how the face came out, though the hair highlights could be better and the eyes aren't exactly even, though I can't tell if it's a failure on my part or if it's a slightly asymmetrical sculpt. The non-metallic metal attempt on the sword blade isn't trailblazing, but it's progress in my ultimate goal of getting better at miniature painting. I also feel the miniature looks very bland from the back. I don't think there's too much more I could have done with the shield without making it insanely noisy, though I could have maybe tried to freehand some gold inlay towards the bottom of the cloak to break up the massive wall of blue. Here's a quick peek at all the colors and materials I used in this project.
It's going to wrap it up for tonight. I hope you learned something or were inspired to start or expand your own collection. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. And if you like the content of this video and would like to see more, please like, share, and subscribe. I'm Jim with Working with Miniatures. I'm truly grateful for your time, and I bid you a fond farewell. Until the next video.